5-minute Bible study, Bible story night. I'm sorry about the live stream not working. I was told from one of the viewers that I didn't have audio coming through. My microphone was supposed to be on and everything, but it just didn't work, and so we're going to have to do a pre-recorded Bible study and upload to YouTube. So if you're watching, that's what happened. Do have an announcement real quick. I want to keep the announcement short. There is a challenge going on. If you are less than 10 years old, less than 10, there is a Bible story challenge. If you will have your parents record yourself telling a Bible story, whether it's one that I've already told or whether it's just a totally different one. They can send that to me to submit for the challenge. I have 6 submissions already, and I'm cutting off the deadline at May 23rd, which is, I think, 3 weeks from now. I'm going to give a beginner's Bible to the winner, their very own brand new one, and also give them a one-on-one Bible story over the internet or in person, depending on what I can do. And then finally, I'm going to get them a gift of their choice. I'll give them some options. So that's something to keep the kids interested. Next week, we'll be telling the stories of Jericho and the defeat at Ai from the book of Joshua. So look forward to next week. This is our 5th Bible story night. So we've been doing this for 5 weeks now. Hooray. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you enjoy the live stream and you would like to continue those, give me some feedback. Otherwise, I'm leaning toward just doing pre-recorded Bible stories anyways, because a lot less people have been watching the live stream version. And with the technical difficulties, it just doesn't seem to be worth it unless a lot of people are enjoying that. So please give me some feedback on live stream or pre-recorded Bible stories. Okay, tonight we're going to tell the stories of Miriam and Aaron defying Moses' leadership, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram defying Moses' leadership, and finally, the 12 spies that Israel sent into the land of Canaan to search out to see if Israel could invade and conquer. And that's also known as the event at Kadesh Barnea. So 3 events from the wilderness wanderings. There's lots of different stories we could tell from that. I've never, ever told these stories before, and so as a story night. And so I hope that you enjoy them. Let's get started. Okay, here we go. In the book of Numbers, Israel was in the wilderness for 40 years, and they had just got started. Moses, of course, was the leader of Israel. God called Moses at the burning bush passage, remember that? And he said, "You stand on holy ground." Well, he led them through the Red Sea, and then Pharaoh and his armies were swallowed up in the Red Sea. You'll remember that from a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week ago. And finally, they got into the wilderness, and they had been wandering around here and there. And Moses has been leading the people this whole time, but Miriam and Aaron is his brother and his sister. And they start to get fed up with this Moses guy. Now, the Bible says that Moses was the most humble man in all the earth. And so the fact they got upset with him didn't have to do with him being arrogant and bow on his chest and say, "Listen to me, everyone." No. The problem was that Miriam and Aaron, his brother and sister, did not like that Moses had married an Ethiopian woman. Miriam and Aaron, they did not like this wife of Moses, and they got mad at him. Now, they came up to him and they said the reason they didn't like the reason they had a problem with Moses wasn't because of his wife. They didn't say that. No. They said, "Why do you feel like that you're better than us? That you have more authority than us? Doesn't God speak to us too?" And, God up there, He's listening to all of our conversations, of course. And He's listening to Miriam and Aaron when they say, "Who do you think you are?" And God comes down in His cloud of glory. And He tells them, He says,
"Listen, there is no one like my servant Moses. No one. There's no one like him that I speak face to face with. Clearly, he is my spokesperson."
and He said a few other things, but God made it very clear that Miriam and Aaron were out of place. And as God was speaking from His cloud of glory, so glorious, He struck Miriam with leprosy. Now, leprosy is a skin disease, and it rots away your flesh. A skin-eating disease. oh, the person looks terrible. And while Moses and Aaron are listening, Moses and Miriam, Moses and Aaron look at Miriam, and they're taken back because she's struck with leprosy. Miriam doesn't know it. And so she's looking at him. Why are y'all's faces? Why y'all look so weird and freaky? And they went, and they're pointing at her, and she started looking, and she's turned leprous. And so she ran away. God said that Miriam would have leprosy for the rest of her life. But then Moses and Aaron, they pleaded with God and they said, God, please don't do this. For we can't keep going in the wilderness without our sister Miriam. And so God, he listened to their plea. He says, okay, I'll listen to you. And instead, because of y'all's repentance, because of y'all's interceding on Miriam's behalf, I'll make it so that y'all only have to keep her outside the camp for 7 days. Then she can come back, and then y'all can continue on your journey. And so, Miriam stayed outside the camp for 7 days. And after that, Miriam's skin was restored as smooth and crystal clear as ever before, and they continued on their way in the wilderness. That was one of the first tests in the wilderness of Israel, wandering. Now the next story is very, very similar. It's the story of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And these 3 men were of the tribe of Levi, and Levi was the tribe where the priests came from. That's important because Moses and Aaron are also of the tribe of Levi, and Aaron was a priest, and Moses really was the first priest of Israel. Well, anyways, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram are three pretty brave guys. They get the idea that they're fed up with Moses a lot like Miriam and Aaron were back in the previous story. And so they come up to Moses and they say, they got a lisp in this story, and they say, we think that you're taking it too much upon yourselves. Who gave you this authority that you should speak and hover yourself over the congregation like you're better than us? And I don't know why they had a list, but they did. And Moses and Aaron, they look at each other. They say, do you hear this guy? You hear these 3 guys? They think that we're better than them. And God's listening. He's always listening. And while this conversation's going back and forth, God comes down in his cloud of glory again. And they're in front of the tabernacle, and God says,
tomorrow, Moses, I want you to tell Korah, Dathan, and Abiram that tomorrow I want them and the 250 other leaders that are with them, defying you, to come to the tabernacle tomorrow. And I'm going to tell them and show them which one of my leaders are my spokesman.
And so Moses, he goes and he tells Korah. He says, Korah! And Korah says, what do you want? Oh, I'm sorry. He says, what do you want? And Moses says, tomorrow, God has called that you should meet us in front of the tabernacle, and he'll show you who his spokesperson really is. And then he calls Dathan and Abiram at their residence, and he says, Dathan and Abiram! And they say, what do you want? And Moses said, tomorrow, come to the tabernacle and bring a censer full of fire and incense, all your 250 leaders. And Dathan and Abiram, unlike Korah, they said, we're not going to come to the tabernacle. We're not going to do it. So Moses goes back, and Korah, he comes the next day like he was told, and he had his censer in hand, and he's got it full of fire and incense. And this was their censer. And they brought this before the tabernacle, and they set it down in front of the tabernacle. And so Aaron brought his censer with fire and incense in it, and he brought it, and he put it down in front of the tabernacle. There were 250 censers full of fire and incense in front of the tabernacle. And then there was Aaron's rod of incense in opposition to all the 250 of Dathan and Abiram and Korah and all their men. Whenever this happened, God came and he spoke out of the cloud, as he did before, and he said,
I want you, Moses, to go and tell everybody in Israel to separate from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram.
And so Moses tells everybody, scatter, get away from their tents. And everybody starts scrambling. And as soon as they did, you know what happened? The ground began to shake. And it began to split open. And they started, like in the flood, to start to climb on everything that they could. Whoa! And that earth started to... And it swallowed the families of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Everyone was swallowed up and killed. Whoo! God had had enough. And all the people in Israel, they knew that something had happened. And that God was not happy with these Korah, Dathan, and Abiram defying Moses. Well, the next day, these people, they're hard-headed, man, and they don't get the point. And they come to Moses, and they say, Moses, you killed the people of the Lord. And God heard that. And those people were judged by God, remember, and God was not happy with these people. Do they ever learn their lesson? And he came down in a cloud, and he started to spread a pestilence among all the people. And people started dying right and left. And Moses, he pleaded before God, and he says, God, please don't destroy this people who you brought out of Egypt by your miraculous hand. And God told Moses, he said, if you'll bring the censer
full of fire and incense and stand between the people, then I'll stop the plague.
And so Moses ran, and he came back with his censer full of fire and incense. And the dead people were over here, and the people that were alive but the plague was spreading to them were over here. And Moses, he held up his, turned it off. He turned on his censer full of fire and incense, and he held it before God between the dead and the living. And at that moment that the cloud of God's glory came over the censer, he stopped the plague. And the people were saved by the intercession of Moses. A glorious event in the wilderness wanderings. Well, the next day after that, God told the people of Israel that were still alive. 14,700 people died from the plague. And that's not including Korah, Dathan, and Abiram's family that was swallowed up by the earth. And the next day, God told Moses and Aaron, he said,
Aaron, I want you to bring your rod, and I want you to bring it to the tabernacle tomorrow.
Here's his rod. He says,
I want you to bring it to the tabernacle tomorrow.
And then he said,
I want you to go and take one rod from each, a leader from each tribe of the 12 tribes of Israel, or 11 tribes, and I want you to have them all bring their rod and place it in your hands, and then I'm going to have you, Moses, bring it in front of the Ark of the Testimony in the most holy place where I come to meet you. And then tomorrow, whichever rod buds a bloom at the end of it, that's the one who I've chosen to represent the people before me in judgment.
And so the next day, each leader brought his rod to Moses. and they laid it down at his feet. And Aaron, he brought his rod, and he laid it down at Moses' feet. And Moses took up all these rods, and he went into the veil of the temple. And while Moses was in there, guess what happened to Aaron's rod? Now, it didn't happen to the other 11 rods, but Aaron's rod started to bloom. And Moses could watch it happen, and a flower came off on the end of it. And almonds were coming out of it. And so when Moses came out, they had all written their names, of course, on the rod so that Moses couldn't trick them. God told him to do that for proof. And he showed that Aaron's rod was the only one that had bloomed, and that was a sign to the people that God had chosen Aaron to represent the people as priest. And that settled the debate of who is God's spokesperson from the Korah, Dathan, and Abiram incident. Okay, the third and the last story, and then we're going to be done, is the story of the 12 spies of Israel when Israel was approaching the land of Canaan, which is where they were going when they left Egypt. They were going all the way down to Canaan. So they finally get up close to Canaan, and they're in a place called Kadesh Barnea. And God tells Israel to get one, you know how they each brought one rod from each tribe? Well, this time God says, I want you to bring a man from each tribe, one man from each tribe, and I want you to send those men out as spies into the land of Canaan. And I want them to sneak in and try to give a report of what the land looks like. Well, God knew who was in the land, and he knew everything about it. But this was a test to see what kind of report these spies would come back with, and if the people would be fearful or courageous. Would they trust in God or would they fear? Well, they send 12 spies into the land. And the Bible doesn't tell us the names of all these spies, but he gives us the name of two of them, and they were Caleb and Joshua. Now they go into the land, and they come back a few days later, and 10 of these guys have a very different report over here than Caleb and Joshua did. 10 of these guys come back and they say, guys, we can't go conquer Canaan. And the people are like, why? Why can't we go conquer Canaan? And they said, because we went in there and we spied out the land. And there were giants 10 feet tall, man. They were huge. We can't defeat them. And the people started to quiver. Now, they had brought a big rod with grape clusters on it. And they brought the fruit, and they said, now the fruit's really good. And the report that we had of a land that's overflowing with honey and milk and grapes and all sorts of fruits, it's true, but we can't defeat those giants. And God was not happy with that report, because God can defeat anybody. And we're going to tell the story of David and Goliath later on. But if you've heard that story, then you know that God can defeat anybody, including a giant. And so these people, they kept on worrying and fretting that they couldn't go into Canaan. And then Caleb and Joshua spoke up. And they said, guys, buck up. Take some courage. We can do this in the name of the God of Israel. There is nothing that he can't help us do and conquer. Take some courage. But God was not happy with the people. And the people told Moses, they said, did you bring us out of Egypt just to kill us in the wilderness by the hands of giants? And Moses came before God, and God said,
how long are these people going to complain against me and not believe in me? I'm going to destroy the whole nation.
And Moses said, Lord, please don't do that. Because if you do that, then all the nations around us will think that you didn't actually bring the people out of Egypt, and that really it was just a pattern of luck. Please, Lord, don't do it. And God said,
okay, I won't destroy them. But those spies were in the land of Canaan for 40 days. And so for every single day that the spies were in the land of Canaan, That's how many years, a year for each day, that you're going to have to roam in this wilderness until the whole generation that is right now is dead and gone, and then their children can go and take the land of Canaan. But this whole generation is going to have to wander the wilderness for 40 years.
And those people, they hung their heads and they turned around and they started heading backward. They would not take the land of Canaan at that time. And that's the story of the 12 spies of Israel. And this whole deal of Israel complaining, God, have you brought us out of Egypt just to kill us? And God getting angry and bringing judgment on the people continued quite a few times before the people of Israel came to Jericho. And Jericho is the next Bible study that we're going to go through, the next Bible story that we're going to go through on Bible Story Night 6 coming up next Friday. So don't forget about the under 10-year-old Bible Story Challenge. Submit me your videos before May 26th, I believe it is, 23rd. And then next Friday at 8 p.m., we may not do a live Bible story next week because, like I talked about, less people watching and difficulty with technology. So let me know if you've enjoyed the live streams, if you want to continue those, and we'll see you next week.